pretty quickly. My God, not getting the bid on Sunday, which was a shock, and then the coach leaves within about 24, 36 hours, and it was reported yesterday by our good friend Keenan Cummings that two of the three recruits, great recruits that were signed for next year, have asked for their releases. That doesn't mean they're not going to play for the Mountaineers, but they're also going to look and see who the next coach is. And it's been tough. It's been very tough.
Yep, tough times, and the snub from the NCAA on the tournament, which you said I think was more shocking than Coach DeVries leaving. I think that's been rumored for past month anyway. Not to Indiana, but to Iowa. That's been rumored for quite some time. But the snub from the NCAA on the tournament was just unbelievable. And I've been watching a lot of the. I watched a lot of the shows since I've been sick. I spent a lot of time watching the ESPN and some of the talk shows, and everybody ranting and raving about it. And of course now, since North Carolina won last night, a lot of people saying that justifies it, which I totally disagree. Don't have anything to do with it. And but yeah, what a slap in the face that was, especially putting North Carolina in. I mean, if it had been somebody else, it may have been a little different. But yeah, tough pill to swallow there.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes in life it's sort of an either or. We got a whole bunch of what I call both ands going on here. Is that, West Virginia was not treated well. There's no question about that. Bubba Cunningham, the whole system with these committees. I mean, that he benefited significantly. Even if he didn't vote, he was there, and so it's just not a good deal. But I think also, many people have said if West Virginia, especially with the governor coming out and saying we're looking at a suit. If we had beaten Colorado, I don't think we'd be in this situation. Right. That's the prevailing opinion. But and you and I were talking before we went on tonight. Is Ren Baker? This is a time in Ren we trust. He's done it before, if you remember, and I know you do. The women's basketball coach, highly thought of, came to Morgantown and left after one season. Went to Minnesota. She's upper Midwesterner and went home. And so he turned around and got Mark Kellogg, and that's been obviously a great hire. And if you saw people saw his press conference today, Ren was just a class act. And, I really do believe that he was being very truthful, that if it weren't for March Madness, he would have a new coach lickety-split. But the real challenge is a lot of these coaches that he is interested in, I'm sure, their teams are playing. So the other thing is that there were 10 schools that were major schools looking for a head coach, and 3 of those have been filled. One today by Will Wade. I had to look at my notes. Is going to North Carolina State. Yeah, and Alex. He was on the list, yeah. Right. And Alex Jensen got the job, not Josh Eiler at Utah. And then obviously Indiana's job is filled. But there are 7 schools, including WVU as of today, 3 in the ACC, 2 in the Big Ten, and then West Virginia and Villanova that are looking for coaches. So there's going to be a lot of competition.
Oh yeah, well, I listened to another gentleman who had last year. He does these predictions, and I forget his name, but had predicted there'd be 62 vacancies last year on all the divisions, and he was off by half. And this year he said there would be 68 and a half vacancies to be filled before it was all said and done. So yeah, it'll be a big domino effect here before long will start. But we hear certain names. There's been 2 or 3 names that seem to prop up, pretty consistently, and have over the last couple of years. So I know I have my pick. I'm not going to say that, but have my choice, and I hope it works out. But it'll go through the process. And like you said, they're playing now, so it's hard to contact these folks while they're still involved. I don't know if they're allowed to do that or not, but several of the names that have been mentioned do have teams in the tournament. So, and
Yeah.
not in the NCAA tournament, in the NIT tournament. So a lot of them are playing. Brighter note, the baseball team continues to plug right along, still playing well.
Oh boy, are they? What very bad situation in Oklahoma last week with those incredible wins. WINDS wins, and
Yeah.
2 of the 3 games were postponed. There were fires all over the state. They got 1 game in. WVU was able to come from behind and win that, and they won. They're playing actually right now against James Madison in Morgantown. And then Arizona's coming in. I think they're 17-1 now, still doing great. And that's the thing, the basketball story, men's basketball story, is overshadowing a great story on WVU baseball and the WVU women's basketball team.
Yep. Yeah, the women with their seeding getting ready to get going, and it's like we were talking earlier. That women's team, if they get it going like they have a couple of times during the season, they could be a real force in this tournament. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they're able to pull off as well.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they do on Saturday afternoon. They're going to play the winner of the Washington Columbia game. I've seen Washington a bit. They're like, I think, 15th in the Big Ten. They're a good team, but I've watched Columbia several times, and even though they're in a sort of a group of 5 situation, not really, but it's lower level.
Right.
They're a lower mid-major at Columbia. Other than Harvard, they lost to Harvard twice, and I think they've only lost 3 games all year. I was very impressed with their shooting, their sets, the quality of play. They're very disciplined. It would be a good matchup, but West Virginia should be favored no matter if it's Washington and then or Columbia. And then it'll be interesting because if WVU wins and then the other team wins as expected, it'll be a WVU North Carolina matchup. And I wouldn't, if I'm Bubba Cunningham, I don't want to go anywhere near the WVU fan section.
No, I don't think so. I think you'd be wiser not to. And you speaking of him, that reminded me too. And again, I don't know this for a fact. I did hear this yesterday. I was listening to the Mad Dog Russo show that Cunningham is in line for a $100,000 bonus if North Carolina makes the tournament. And I thought right there, I don't care if he was set in when North Carolina was being discussed or not. Doesn't make any difference. He's been there with those folks for a week and a half, 2 weeks, whatever. Has relationships with them. He's having dinner with them every evening. He gets $100,000 bonus for that. Not, he probably doesn't need the money, but still, there's just something that's just not right with that. Not saying he did anything wrong or anything like that, but it just seems like such a conflict of interest to me, and I don't understand how you can even be involved. And if they are going to let him be involved, why not make it public? Let us watch it. Let's see what's going on. Let's hear the discussions.
You're right.
Let's see it. Transparency would go a long way into take care of a lot of these arguments and complaints and mistrust of the whole system. And I don't know. You look at them getting in. It's just I don't know. They're a blue blood team and they're a money making team for the networks and he's getting the money bonus and et cetera, et cetera. You can just go on and on and on. And I don't know. It's just something that's just not right about it. Just not fair. And I'm not saying.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it just because of West Virginia, because I'm like you. If West Virginia beating Colorado like they should have in the tournament, we wouldn't have this discussion. But they didn't, and we are having this discussion. So then you start looking at how it all transpired and how North Carolina got in. Then it makes you question the whole system, and what they're doing.
Oh, you're absolutely correct. I was reading an article the other day, and someone who was involved in the old BCS system, the bowl championship system, was talking about how good he thought that system was based on that formula. And if you remember back in the day, we would get those figures from the bowl champion system. They had their model, they would run their data, and then you would get a score. And it basically the committee only had to take a light touch, but basically it was the computer that did that. And they rely so much on the net and other analytics. But once you get this, because look, these ads have a huge stake in this financially, career wise. Coaches do too. Computers don't have relationships. So, and there are no politics. And if you don't like the model, just improve it. That's the deal. But they won't do that. And they mess it up. They just mess it up.
Yeah. And again, I think, transparency would go a long way.
Yeah.
Solve a lot of the problems and would make people feel a lot better. All right, enough of the negative stuff. Let's get on to the positive. We got a great show lined up tonight, and we're tickled to death and very fortunate to have with us the newest WVU Mountaineer mascot, local fellow here for me, right here in Fayette County, and we're going to have him on here in just a second. CADE KINCAID is his name. He's over in Fayetteville, and CADE. I know his father quite well. He and I graduated high school together, been friends, lifelong friends, and we're tickled to death to have CADE here with us. So, Darren, if you want to bring CADE on into the front court, so get him going. Hey, CADE, good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you, Greg.
I told him prior to going on the air that beard was looking awful good. He's been shaping it up since he won the contest.
Yep, it's been a couple, probably more than a year of no shaving. It's work in progress, man. It's something I've been trying to let go, but you got to shape it up every once in a while.
It looks good. I want to ask you first of all. I know we were all tickled to death when you won this thing. I wanted to find out exactly what the process is that you go through. I know it's not, you just don't show up and say, "Hey, look at my beard, pick me." What's this whole process like, getting to be the Mountaineer?
Yeah, I know that selection committees are a hot topic right now, but we do have a really good committee. It's people that are really dedicated to the school, dedicated to this position, and don't take it lightly. It's a larger committee that sits down and they go through. Everybody applies. They pick through the applicants. There's no pictures on the applicants, so beard doesn't get you in. Then you go into an interview. After the interview, they narrow it down to 4. And then, of course, after the final 4, it's a cheer off. Winner of the cheer off, it's kind of a accumulation of all the things that you do between the application to after the cheer off. And then the selection committee, makes an unbiased decision based on, points and grades of all 3 events, kind of totaled up.
When I was at Glenville, basically I had an opportunity to be the pioneer. It's kind of like the Mountaineer mascot that had the beard, the musket, and the suit. But it was all determined. We were all at the pub one night getting drunk, and somebody said, "Man, you got a nice beard. Won't you be the pioneer?" And I'm like, "Hey, I ain't doing that. I don't want to be the pioneer." So it's a little different process to be the Mountaineer. It's quite an honor to be the Mountaineer, it sounds like.
Sounds like a little bit different, but
Yeah.
You would have done great.
No, I'm sure. I held my own, even though I didn't have the outfit on.
Yeah.
I did my fair share. One of the things that my brother and I were talking about when you won this thing was the academic side of things. You're going to be, I know I contacted the office about getting you on, and they were talking about your schedule and everything. And I know you'll do a lot of traveling with the teams and that sort of thing. You make a lot of personal appearances at different events and that kind of stuff. Academically, how hard is that going to be? Have you looked into that yet to see how it's going to be to keep up with your academic work, because you are quite the student, so I'm sure that's a concern.
Yeah, academics come first, no matter what for me. So even with this position, it's going to be get the work done, then be the Mountaineer. So I've worked really hard the first 3 years. I'm already at 120 some credit hours, and I've only got 30 some more, and I've really doubled down on some semesters, took 18, 21 credit hours, and I really bulked up my schedule to where now it should be a little bit easier next semester. But even in high school, I've always taken academics really seriously. Fayetteville was a great place that facilitated that for me. Don't know where I got it from. Probably not my dad. That's a little bit of a joke, but
Had to be your mom. Had to be your mom.
had to be my mom.
Remember,
But
I went to high school with your dad. Remember that?
yeah, I do. He's smart when he wants to be. What he wants to be. And he gave. I guess I want to be all the time because, I wanted to be gold. I'm a Golden Horseshoe winner. I really took that seriously. It's just big, like it's prestigious as an in-stater to have that reward. And then I love numbers, so I was at every math field day every year, and it's just I've always taken academics really seriously. So I think since I've done it my entire life, it should continue to be the same. And I'm a pretty calm and reserved person in Morgantown, and not too many distractions get in the way. So I think it'll be pretty easy to balance the two.
Awesome, sounds great. And I know, all jokes aside, you do come from a family of intellect, no doubt about it. Your sister thinks in med school up there, I believe. And,
yep.
Does quite well. So yeah, no surprise there. Frank, you want to jump in with a question?
Well, CADE, first of all, congratulations. It's great. There are mascots and there are mascots. And one of the benefits, I think, of the WVU mascot with the Mountaineer is that all of us know you. We can see you. We know your identity. We can interact with you. That's great. When I was at Michigan State, they got the Spartan, but he comes out in this big suit. And so, and they keep the identity. You don't know who any Spartan is at any one time. And the way they do it, the tradition, which is interesting, is that at graduation, the person who happens to be the Spartan that year goes into the line with the Spartan suit on. And then as he goes toward the stage, finally takes the head off. So it actually reveals himself. And it's only until after their term as the mascot do you know who was the Spartan. Your situation is very different because your face is recognizable. You're at a variety of events. I really prefer it the way that WVU does it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And I think where you draw the line between the two is that our mascot means something. Not to say that a Spartan doesn't mean anything, but when you think about Michigan, it's kind of a 50-50 toss-up of which university represents the state. And even then, it might not even be. You could say that neither of them do it. And completely, to be honest, West Virginia University is the only school in the country that a school represents a state, and a school represents every single person within that state. So I think it means something more to have a real face in front of it, because the mascot does mean something. It means something that's bigger than a school. It's really West Virginia is a great thing. It touches every single county. It has a extension service everywhere. We've got satellite campuses. So our university really services our entire state. And I think that it would be a disservice if it was a mascot head instead of, a real face. And I think just that meaning is why we do it.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah, and I think, Frank, talking about the mascot head, we got a real face. We got a real beard and a real gun.
Yeah.
So, ours is better. Ours is the best. Kate, I tell you what, man, we're looking forward to it. And I know you are as well. When do you actually take over the reins?
Yeah, April 4th. So you were talking a little bit about the great baseball season. I'm so excited to finish out. I think April 4th is the passing of the rifle ceremony where I will take over for Braden. And then, my activities start on April 5th. So I'll be there for the spring game. And then I know there's a baseball game that evening I'd like to go to. And, I'm really looking forward because North Carolina, there's some bad blood between us. And it started last year, I think, in that baseball. I work hard in kitchens over the summer. And I remember I was not too happy with one of my coworkers when he was rooting for North Carolina in that game where, that ninth inning just that was a heartbreaker. I'm completely addicted with baseball, and it's my favorite sport. And Moneyball says that it's hard to not be romantic about baseball, and I truly believe that. And seeing us lose in that fashion last year, I think that's kind of what started the. I hope when I take over that we get some revenge this year as far as baseball goes.
Hey, Cade, I'll tell you, you're starting on the 15th, the 5th. We're going to be at Kegler's. Yeah, we're going to be at Kegler's on the 5th after the spring game, which is now called the showcase, before the baseball game starts. So we'd love to see you out at Kegler's.
Oh, that's if that's something that they'll let me do, or I have time to do, it's of course I will. Like Greg said, it's y'all got Greg. That's what's pulling y'all the best. I've known Greg my whole life. And
there you go.
Greg's son just happened to be one of the people I celebrated with right after I won. He came and met me over at a restaurant, and Sam's been a lot of fun. Fun time, and been a good person for me. He's really helped me loosen up a little bit. It's hard to be tense around Sam, so I'll do anything for Chris.
I told Cade, I think Sam was more excited than Cade was. He called me on the phone and he was going crazy. He thought that was the greatest thing ever. Yes, come on down to Kegler's. We'll be there doing the show. We're going to do it after the whatever, if it's a game or whatever it is. But we'll be at Kegler's, so come on by and at least come by and say hello to us.
If I'm not in the Buckskins, I'll at least come say what's up.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Cade.
Sounds great.
Congratulations
Thanks.
No problem.
Great season. Looking forward to it.
You too. I'll see you, Greg. You too, Frank.
Bye-bye. All right, that's exciting. Cade's a fine young man, comes from a great family, and I know he's looking forward to doing this as much as we're looking forward to seeing him do it. Man, we was excited for him. So, all right, Frank, next in line, another Mountaineer, great Mountaineer Greek that we've had on the show before. I had him on my show as well, and we are tickled to death to have Al Johnson here with us, former strength coach at WVU, among other things. And I welcome him in. Al, thanks for coming by and giving us some time in. And I told Frank the other day that one thing we got to make sure, you don't have to do it now, but before we get off the air, we want to hear the Baltimore Orioles story about your run-in with the umpires that night. So I want to make sure we get that on. So don't let me forget that. So welcome to the show. Thanks for coming in.
Well, thank you. Appreciate coming here. Good to see you guys again. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a little while. I know you keep up with what's going on in Mountaineer world, and I know basketball probably is not the top of your list of interest, but you see with the football program with Coach Rich Rod coming back, I want to get your thoughts on that. What's your feelings there?
I think it's good. I think it's with the transition right now going with men's basketball. I've been thinking about this for about a day. You think to keep West Virginia from being a stepping stone program, an athletic program, there's a lot to be said for homegrown former Mountaineers taking the reins. Because maybe you get more stability. But I think Rich will do a great job. I think he's, I don't know how much he's mellowed as far as coaching style, but I think that he's, he has he's got a lot more wisdom, and I think he's, like he said, he's a better coach now than he was 10 years ago, and he's a better coach than he was 5 minutes ago. So I think it'll be a good fit. I'm excited. I think he's going to. I like it. In fact, he's shaking things up, and I think the Big 12 will be a better conference for having him at the reins.
Yeah, I agree. Frank, did you have a video or a graphic you want to put up for Al before we move on? We'll go ahead and do that if you want to. Sure.
Anytime Darren is ready. Al, this video, I really like this. You were doing it looked like a seminar or a workshop, and you were talking about how important it is for a strength and conditioning coach to develop relationships with the athletes. And it's about a 2-minute clip. And I thought it was extremely insightful. So if Darren's ready to run that, otherwise I'll ask a question. Okay, so Darren's ready to go. Here we go.
The analogy, Coach, I would use is one thing. You're in Walmart. You trained Rob here 5 years ago. He graduated. You're in Walmart 5 years from now. You're down aisle 7. This may sum up what kind of coach or what kind of trainer or what kind of physical therapist you are. You see him 5 years later in aisle 7 coming towards you. How does he respond? How does she respond? If they acknowledge you, you had an impact. If they don't acknowledge you and turn and try to duck away, that means that you didn't quite get it done. But if they come up to you and embrace you, I can't tell you the number of athletes, and I'm sure coaches the same way. Some of these coaches around here, how many coaches, how many athletes, former athletes you have, 2 years, 5 years, 8 years down the road, 10 years down the road, you get a text, you get an email, Facebook, whatever, coach, the kids say, man, coach, I want to tell you what, I never had a chance to thank you for what you did for me. Those type of things are important. But remember, it's not all about sets and reps, it's not all about program design. It's about relationships, it's about motivating those people you're involved with. Coach brought a great point, coach every set, coach every rep. How many times you see people training people? I've seen them, they're trained, they got the backs athlete, look to watch, they're texting, and the kids are here doing sets and reps, and they doing the right way. Hey, just said 10, you know, I mean, what do you build? What happens after the training program's over? How likely are they to come back to you unless mom and dad slow down to 20 mile an hour and push them out of the car to come to you? Not very likely.
Well, you guys dug that out of the archives. Did you have to convert that from 16 millimeter to go? Did it go from a cassette to some type of beta? I mean, geez.
Well, I'll tell you, the guy that I got it from, I had to give him $500, and it was very difficult to get in touch with. I had to go on the dark web to get it, but it was well worth it. But you know, it's interesting because that applies. We think it doesn't apply, but it does in all of our work. I'm sure the same thing with Greg, kids that he coached in high school, young men. 5-10 years later, what you were saying was, you meet them in Walmart, you don't want them to duck away. They want you to come up and say, "Boy, you made a difference in my life." But I have a question along those lines. Rich Rod said recently at one of his press conferences, he kept on making the point, everybody on our staff is a recruiter. Everyone on our staff is a recruiter. And someone pushed him on that. And he said, even the strength and conditioning coach, I expect him to recruit. Is that a shift in a paradigm? Is that something that you were involved in because you were Northwestern?
From my first day as a graduate assistant, I was with Don Nealon to Dave Van Hallinger, all the way through to the end of my career. I've always been involved in recruiting. Kids coming on camp. I mean, I can only recruit on campus. You never pick up the phone, whatever. That was illegal to call them. But I mean, once they came on campus, I mean, you'd meet with their parents, you'd meet with the recruit, you'd have a recruiting presentation that would be applicable to what you would, the things you'd be doing in your strength conditioning program. But I think what Rich was alluding to, I mean, it's like, from the top to the bottom, everyone's involved in recruiting because you don't, that's the thing that's really cool about really meeting new people is there may be, 5 people may talk to that recruit, and the 6th person that comes through the door may be the assistant strength coach or the assistant trainer. In some way they connect with that kid, male or female, and that may be the thing that flips that kid to come to West Virginia.
Boy, great answer.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah. I can't tell you the amount of years involved in athletics where it'd be Easter Sunday, leave church early to get to Mountaineer Stadium or the Coliseum. I was at West Virginia to meet with the recruit for Coach Catlett or for Coach Nealon, and you're involved in that process, and it was really neat. It was fun to be involved with.
Yeah, and I think now in I don't know how it was 20 years ago or whatever, but today the strength and conditioning for basketball is pretty intense as well. I don't think it used to be so much that way, but you hear players, former players, and we've talked to a lot of former players, and they mentioned the strength and conditioning coaches and what an impact they had on their lives and their careers and that sort of thing. So extremely important position, obviously, and I think becoming more and more. How do you think I know it's changed. People are bigger, stronger, faster, all those types of things. But how has the strength and conditioning uh, aspect of it all changed with football and basketball?
Well, I think there's a lot more science involved. There's a lot more hands on deck, so to speak. I mean, in terms of, I know with football, I mean, you have in most cases, the Power Four schools, you have 5 full-time coaches, strength coaches working with athletes. And some schools that can't afford, they may have three full times and 2 GAs. But I think there's more science involved. There's more. I think the importance of strength conditioning is more prevalent now. I think the one parameter that I see emphasized even more and more in some of my travels is recovery and nutrition. I mean, the last 15 years, it's become so more prominent, and I think there's so much more emphasis put on. I mean, the budgets at some of these Power Four schools just for nutrition, is in hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're not talking about 50 to 100,000. We're talking. There's some schools in the Big Ten right now just for football that are spending probably close to $500,000 a year just on nutrition. And I'm talking about football, and that could be the same thing in basketball, I'm sure. And what's neat is that almost all the Power Four schools have a full-time sports dietitian. And it's grown. It's just, it's awesome. It's a beautiful thing. My travels in the fall. I travel in the fall a lot, and I go visit companies. I visit different companies that are sponsors, potential sponsors, companies, et cetera. But I always tie in a university visit. Last few years, New Mexico State, Iowa, Michigan State, Penn State, Northwestern, Pitt, different North Carolina, South Carolina. But it's amazing the level of facility and the level of training that these athletes are getting. And the thing right now, think about this. Strength and conditioning coaches right now today, was it March 19th? Are as important as they've ever been, but they're getting less time to develop the athlete with the NIL and the transfer portal.
Yeah.
So now, how does me as a head basketball coach at West Virginia or head football coach at West Virginia, how do I evaluate that strength coach on results when I may only have a kid for 2 semesters or 6 semesters, or because of the transfer portal? So it's tough. It's tougher now than it's ever been as far as development's concerned, in all aspects, whether it be on the field or court or in the weight room.
Yeah. Is there a big difference? And you may not know the answer to this. I know you spent some time in professional sports, but big difference in the college, training aspect of it than into the pros, because I notice. I'm a Boston Celtics fan, so I watch the Celtics all the time. I noticed somebody like Jason Tatum, for example, when he first came into the league, he was, in my eyes, kind of scrawny, kind of small. He was tall, but he was thin. And now you look at him, and he's a full-grown, bulked-up man. And I just wonder what the difference in the type of training there is from the college to the pro level.
Well, first of all, the first thing is academics. You've taken academics out of the picture in terms of, now they have more time to dedicate to their trade, which is one. They have more time to train, and the what they have available. They have more one-on-one training. And I'm thinking about basketball right now. A lot more one-on-one training, and even in NFL. You're looking at a smaller roster. As a strength conditioning coach in college, you may be training 105. The rosters have been 115, 120 plus. Now they're going down to 105. So, now in professional football, you're only talking 50, 55. 53-man roster? You have a head strength coach and probably 2 assistants, so they get more attention. Same way in basketball, you're only talking 12 to 15 athletes, but they have more focus on development.
Yeah, that makes sense. And now that I asked that question, I think that was a dumb question because I could have.
No.
That's
No,
pretty obvious.
Good,
I mean,
good
that's
question.
pretty obvious.
Good question. Very good
Yeah,
question.
pretty obvious. But you do notice the difference in the size in just a couple of years, and those guys. It's amazing. The type of training too, I think, would have to have changed some. Because back when I was in high school and college, um, it was how much can they bench press, and you look at these linemen and they had muscles in their earlobes, they were huge. Now it seems like you see the offensive linemen, they're big and strong guys, but they don't have that big bulky muscle build up. They're quicker, faster. It seems like there's obviously more emphasis on that. How has the style of training, the type of training changed?
Well, I mean, you look at. I mean, look how many teams are running. No huddle. How many teams? You talk about football. No huddle. There's more. Up tempo. The conditioning aspect of it. I mean, it's hard to put a lot of bulk and size on kids because you're running a lot of mass off of them. And that's one thing. But then the thing too, I mean, look at some of these. I just watched the NFL Combine 3 weeks ago, and looked at some of these defensive linemen were 6'7", 320 pounds. It looks like they had less than 12 to 15% body fat, which is incredible. I mean, a lot of those things are attributed to genetics. But I think there's been a lot more emphasis put on, how strong, how much is too much strength. Hey, the days of you hear stories that back in early days, you think about West Virginia. I mean, we were getting some of the kids we got. I don't even know if they had any stars. You talk about 3 stars, 4 stars. I mean, and what I'm saying, that's the job that our coaches at West Virginia, Coach Nealon and staff. I mean, they looked under rocks and behind bushes to find kids that no one else was recruiting. And so, with that, I mean, we had to get them bigger and stronger because we couldn't compete with other teams athletically as much in some positions. And so now, the teams are so, I mean, you look across the board, teams are so athletic. And I think there's been more emphasis put on athleticism. And, your training's changed in terms of, you're a lot more. And, we put a lot of emphasis on it, but we had to get big and strong. But there's more emphasis on movement, on yoga, on stretching, on flexibility, if you're big and too bulky, I mean, can you sustain a great effort late into a game? And that's the goal. I mean, that's the mindset. Whether they could or not, you convince them that they could because you play the Jedi mind tricks with them in terms of motivating them and thinking. It was fun. I mean, but the thing is, did you see Rick Pitino's recent interview about asking what's the difference between kids that you recruited 20 years ago and the kids now? And well, no, I'm sorry, not Pitino. Is actually Rich Rodriguez talked about kids they'd run through a wall. You tell them they run through the wall. Now, before they run through the wall, they want to know why. Why do you want me to run through the wall?
Yeah.
And so,
yep.
It's good. But kids nowadays across the board are more intelligent. They're smarter. They've been exposed to more, and they understand. They understand a little better.
Yeah, and they also tend to run through the door nowadays. If they get too rough, they just go somewhere else.
Yeah, no question.
And Mickey Plumlee would be thrilled with the notion of stretching and plyometrics and those type of things because that's the way he trained back in 1969. He told us many times. So,
right.
Frank, you want to jump in there?
It's all. This is fascinating always, and a couple of things I wanted to talk with you about. Ask questions, and one actually Rich Rod brought up again, and that is, he said we've gone halfway through spring practice. It's spring break week for the players; they're away, and so someone asked him, "What are the coaches doing?" Well, he said we're looking at those players that are in the portal or likely to be in the portal. I think it was both. It may not have been, but definitely in the portal for sure, because we're going to have to go out after spring training and almost in every position. And he talked particularly about the wideout position to folks to bring in. Now, as it relates to your job, in strength and conditioning, you'll work with these kids when they come in. He said we're gonna have to let a lot of kids go. The numbers are such that we're gonna have to. The kids that are there now that we have really taken a good look at, we're not going to be able to keep them all, and we're going to bring in additional kids after spring ball and they're going to be there in pre-fall drills. That's tough, particularly for someone in your role, because you want to establish a relationship with these guys and stick with them and tend to their development, and they may not be there in a matter of like 3 months.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, there may be kids on that roster who've been there 2-3 years. Now all of a sudden you're cutting them loose. The only landing spot, so to speak, if they cannot stay at an opportunity to Division I level, I mean, it's going to help Division II, Division III schools, FCS schools. It almost sounds like a pro business model if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in pro baseball for 5 years, you'd be working with all spring training with maybe a veteran outfielder, and maybe he's your fourth outfielder, and then all of a sudden the next day you look over and his locker's cleaned out, and he's maybe he's been with you for 2 years, maybe he's been with you for 2 months, but it's such a transitional time in terms of athletics. But boy, I can't imagine the conversations that Rich and the coaching staff or any coaching staffs are having to try to eliminate. I think they have to eliminate somewhere close to 15 to 20 bodies, players, and I think the good coaches will, I mean, it's not going to be an easy conversation, but you'll find out a lot about coaches in terms of if they help these athletes try to land in other spots, and that there's no guarantees, but boy, that would be tough. I mean, especially what you mentioned. You create these relationships, and boom, they're gone.
Yeah. This next question, Al, that was a great response. I'm going to trade a bit on your standing in the field. And Greg and I have talked about this. You were Strength and Conditioning Coach of the Year. You're in the Strength and Conditioning Coaches Hall of Fame. So you have elevated status in the profession. The NCAA just made a very big decision. And this came up in one of Rich Rod's press conferences about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And that decision was college athletes now can use marijuana, not just recreationally, but beyond that. So now the programs are faced with an issue that was just off limits. You didn't have to think about it before. And you and I talked about this before the show. Am I overreaching by saying this could be a game changer, particularly in terms of the use of marijuana with respect to dealing with injuries, muscular injuries in particular? Or is this did the NCAA make a wrong call here? And if they didn't, how should schools handle this?
In my last year coaching was 2021 at East Tennessee State, and I started to see a shift, a nonverbal shift in terms of coaches. They test. You do drug tests, and you're like you hope and pray. They want to get selective in when they tested. It's not. They had no way of, they couldn't handpick who they were testing. And so the testing. So obviously if they were testing, they wanted to do it in the spring, and this is probably universal throughout the country. They wanted to do it in the spring, or they wanted to do it postseason. And they didn't, they didn't have any choices. The NCAA would come in and say, hey, after the third game and the seventh game, you're testing your players. I think there's been such a shift in the society. I think I think that's been coming in the works probably for 3 to 5 years, but I think it's taken I think it's taken it out of the coaches and universities' hands in terms of like they worried about testing. The thing that reading about this last June, NCAA passed this rule, was they still leave it up to the university. So there's still some universities out there that still want to keep this implemented. You know, I think a lot of the noise with this in terms of marijuana use, in terms of athletes, was predicated on NFL football players. You know, they've seen it. There are three things. One, speed up the recovery process as a result of using marijuana. Two, help recovery from post-concussion. And the other thing was neuropathic pain, which is neuropathy, which is nerve pain. So those were three key things that I think that in terms of athletic performance, those are three things. I'm old school. I don't know if I could let go on this one, in terms of saying, hey, we're not testing, because, I think, I don't know. I look in some respects, this is a, athletes, if this is, if we're really pushing a needle here, is this a crutch? Is this a crutch to give them an excuse? Geez, if you have the right mindset, work ethic, obviously you don't feel you need these things, but I think that the research is inconclusive. There's no vast amounts of research to show that, hey, it conclusively dramatically improves recovery, post-concussion recovery, and neuropathy. Those are three. And the thing is, I worry about the day-to-day athlete. I worry about focus. I worry about coordination, hand coordination. I worry about cognitive skills. Those things, on a daily basis, if athletes are using, marijuana, those are the things that myself as a strength coach, I worry about. I really worry about, because, we open Pandora's box. Are we going to create going forward? Maybe it's not this year. Maybe it's 5 years from now. We're going to create a lot of problems as a result of not testing these athletes anymore. That's something. I think that's something that we've got to think about, and something that's on the forefront. That's a great question. I don't know how you can answer that.
It was a good answer. And Rich Rod basically didn't answer in terms of what the policy is going to be with the football program, and I think it just takes more thought. For reasons that you gave. Anyway,
did he give the response about going to the basement in the pajamas? Was that the one? Didn't care. He said, hey, what they do 20 years from now when they're sitting in the basement watching TV and pajamas and eating Cheetos and cannabis, was that the response?
Yeah, it's interesting because today Ren Baker's press conference, when he was talking about the basketball situation, he went out of his way to say the incoming president always tunes into Rich Rod's press conferences because he gets such a kick out of them. And some of them make the news, like, we're not sure about marijuana, but TikTok dancing, never.
Out.
TikTok's out. So, it's good. So, yeah.
I would think, too, talking about this, the universities having, some of them deciding to go ahead and implement policies, I would think, they're going to have to weigh the, risk reward there, because, kids today, I retired from teaching a few years back, but, it had gotten to the point where it was like, even with my own kids, when we grew up, it was, if you drank a beer, that was the thing. And now, marijuana use is just kind of like a normal thing that they do. It's really, for folks our age, Al, Frank, me, it's kind of startling, and first time one of my kids mentioned, I went nuts, and then I sat down and thought about it and thought, well, it could be worse. They could be, taking pills or drinking liquor or whatever, So when the kids look to go to school, if they do use marijuana or, if for health, whatever, pain relief or whatever. But if they decide to go to a certain school and that school has policies implemented to test for that and suspend or whatever they do if they're caught doing it, might weigh their decision, against them. They may end up going somewhere else because of that. I mean, I don't know that, but I would think, I can't think for these young people. I don't know how they think, but if that's something they may look at and weigh into the decision. So the schools are in kind of a tough spot there as well, to decide whether or not they're going to have those policies. I mean, I know we all have our personal opinions about it, but in our society, it's that's the way it is.
And Greg, there's 24 states right now currently where it's legal.
Right.
I mean, you're talking about half of America, almost half the states in America, it's legal.
Yep.
And so, I mean, that's just like Colorado. How can you, Colorado, and correct me if I'm wrong, was one of the first states to legalize marijuana, and then you got athletes, University of Colorado, that could fail a drug test because of marijuana.
Right.
I mean, and that's an institutional rule that they would have to make a decision on. That's, and coaches. I mean, I can tell you what coaches probably. I'm sure unofficially, coaches are probably celebrating that they don't have to worry about it. Kids getting dinged for a positive marijuana test.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I used to not bragging about this. When I did teach school, the kids always want to talk about, do you think you'll see it legalized? I said, yes, it'll be legal before too long. I retired in 2018, and I told them then I thought it would be. And, they always want to know what I thought about it. So I'd always say, well, it's the way I think about it is that if I'm driving down the road and there's a car coming at me, would I rather the person in that car be drinking liquor and driving 90, or somebody that just smoked a joint and who was going 30 and thought he was going 90? I said, I'll take the guy going 30. But anyway, it's going to be a tough one there. And you like you said, the coaches, I'm sure, are kind of relieved because, when they get hit for that, you lose your good players or whatever the case may be, any player really. But it's something that they all worry about. I know my son coaches college basketball, and it's always an issue that they have to worry about. So I'm sure the coaches will be relieved. The universities, on the other hand, it's going to be a tough decision the way they handle that. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes. But before we run out of time, I mentioned to you when we first came on, I wanted to hear this story when you were in the Orioles about your experience with, I don't know, you tore into the umpires or something, I think was the way the story went. But I'll let you tell the story, and I want to hear that before we get off the air.
I'm going to try to give you. I'm going to give you the Cliff Note version. Okay. In my first year in baseball, we're playing the Kansas City. I'm with the Orioles, and we're in the visitors' dugout. We're in Kansas City, playing the Royals, and so Billy Ripken, our second baseman, Cal's brother, is up to bat, and our third base coach is Cal Ripken Sr. And so, the players always said, hey, whenever you see the veins popping in like Cal Sr.'s neck, he's pretty upset. If you see him ever argue about anything. And so this particular night, Billy Ripken gets called out on a check swing, third strike. So he's out. He strikes out. So here's the third base umpire, or here's the third base coach, Cal Ripken Sr. He runs down the third base line. And I'd never seen this in baseball from Little League all the way through. I'd see a third base coach running down the line towards the home plate, and he's yelling. And before Frank Robinson, our manager, could get out of the dugout, Cal Sr. was already in the face of the home plate umpire, and he's spitting tobacco juice, and he's in his face talking to him. And so anyway, while this is going on, our players in our dugout are catcalling the third. They're yelling at the umpire like, you guys stink. This is terrible, blah, 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 blah. Well, anyway, Cal Sr. gets thrown out of the game. And while this is going on, the third base umpire, he wheels and turns and he points in our dugout, and he's pointing to the guy beside me. And the guy beside me is a journeyman pitcher. He's on a rehab assignment. He's not officially on the roster actively. And his name was Mickey Walt. And he was there, and he says, "Hey, you're out of here." So this kid gets up to leave the dugout to go back into the clubhouse. He'd been thrown out of the game. He didn't say a word. He didn't say a word. Before he could get to the steps to go back into the clubhouse, Frank Robinson's at home plate, and he's talking to the home plate umpire. He goes, find out later. He tells him, he goes, No, don't throw him out of the game. He goes, I'm activating him tomorrow. He's going to pitch in tomorrow's game. He goes, hey, see the guy down there that looks like he doesn't belong in the dugout? Hey, see the guy that looks like he moves furniture or he's a truck driver? He goes, hey, right now, he has no function in dugout. Throw him out. He throws. So anyway, the home plate umpire, he overrides the third base umpire because third base umpire was pointing, and this kid got up left, was leaving. Home plate umpire, he yells my name. He goes, Johnson, you're out of the game. I'm thinking, wait a minute. I've never met this guy before. How's he know my name? And so anyway, so I get kicked out of the game, and the joke was, Cal Ripken Sr. smoked 10,000 non-filter Camel cigarettes a year. Okay. He ended up passing away of lung cancer, by the way, if you hadn't guessed. And so, anyway, this is the first of 15 rain delays I was involved in 5 years. So the team comes back into the clubhouse, and we're there, and Frank Robinson, he goes, I can't believe that you didn't even argue getting called, thrown out of the game. He goes, is your old job still available? This is in April now, late April. He goes, is your old job at West Virginia still open? He goes, and he was pimping me. So anyway, so the rain delay was over, went back out, but I even got a call in the clubhouse when the rain delay was over from my boss, my general manager in Baltimore. He called and asked me what I said. I said, I didn't say a word. And so I ended up getting fined $1,000, $1,000. I didn't say a word. And I was so upset that I was going to go to the bank and get $1,000 worth of pennies and put them in a box and send them to Bobby Brown, who was the president of the American League, send him the pennies with a letter. And it was like a week and a half later, we're in the clubhouse, and I'm at the end of the clubhouse, getting ready to go in the weight room, and I got Cal Ripken Jr., Kurt Schilling, and I've got Mike Messina. They walked by me and they said, hey, we need to talk to you. I said, okay. So they hand me an envelope, and they said, you need to learn how to keep your mouth shut. We'll take care of this one. The next one's on you. There was 10 $100 bills in the envelope, and they paid the fine. But since I was made the scapegoat, of the whole thing. But that was my welcome to Major League Baseball right there.
I tell you, Al, that story had more twists and turns. Just as soon as I thought it was over, now we're on a different street. It kept on. That is a great story.
Yeah, it was. Hey, next time you have me on, when you ever have me on, I need to tell you the story about how I got locked in the Kingdom with Cal Ripken Jr. and our bullpen catcher. How we got locked in the roof of the dome. We were standing on top of the Kingdom in Seattle. Remember, at some point, I need to tell you that story.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people, Greg, don't know that Al was the first strength and conditioning coach the Orioles ever had, and one of the first 2 or 3 in Major League Baseball.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I had the Major League team plus 6 minor league teams. So I traveled, and that was, it was so early in the process that, Major League Baseball, they didn't understand the importance of and the impact of a strength and conditioning coach with Major League Baseball teams. And so, I remember going to, 6 different cities, and the one that really stands out, and you guys will appreciate this, is Bluefield, West Virginia.
Oh, yeah.
It's the Bluefield Orioles, where a lot of the veteran, legends of Oriole baseball started. But I'll never forget walking the clubhouse and then the post-game meal, the post-game meal, these were low A-ball players, was the leftover hot dogs and hamburgers from the concession stand.
Oh, man.
But no, it gets worse. There were fly strips hanging from the ceiling all over the clubhouse with bugs and mosquitoes that landed on the fly strips. And these players are sitting in their cubbies eating these burgers and dogs while there are dead bugs hanging above them.
Yeah.
And then guess where the urinals were in the clubhouse? They were in the center of the clubhouse, in the middle.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, that was fun. So those were the conditions with which we started. I'm sure that clubhouse has been bulldozed now probably at least 2 decades.
Yeah. Boy.
That's funny. That's funny considering earlier on when you talked about the hundreds of thousands of dollars that these places spend on nutrition nowadays. That they were eating the leftover hot dogs.
Yeah, and I'm sure the hot dogs were cold too. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Good stories. Good stuff. Al, we can't tell you how much we appreciate you joining us tonight, and we will definitely have you on again and hear this story about the Kingdom. We're looking forward to that. That'll give us another one we can jot down and remind you of when we come back. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Very entertaining, very enjoyable talking to you.
Well, appreciate you guys having me, and go Mountaineers.
That's right.
All right. That's all right.
Thanks, Al.
You guys
Thanks.
take care.
much,
Thank
Al.
you. Take care. Bye. Have a good evening.
Great stories, as always.
Oh, boy. Wasn't that something?
And he is, I don't know how many people know this, but a legend as far as strength and conditioning goes. He's a name that you mentioned, the circles. They know him. They know who Al Johnson is for sure, and has done a fantastic career. And I'm sure it's been, somebody like him that's been involved in that. I'm sure it's something that he's enjoyed watching the progression of and the importance of it grow like it has. I'm sure it's been satisfying for him being in that profession.
Yeah, and he's had so many different experiences.
Oh, yeah.
Not just West Virginia, but he was at Ohio State. He was at Northwestern. He ended his career, as he mentioned, at East Tennessee State. And it just shows you that someone like Al with tremendous knowledge, but character and integrity, it does matter. And I was thinking about that again today when I was watching Ren Baker. Has every reason to be really emotional and upset because he's getting a lot of negative feedback in terms of what has happened to the Mountaineers over the last couple of days. And boy, he kept his cool and basically said, look, we've got a good program here. We're going to get a good coach. And he's done it before and he'll do it again. And and so I've got a name here. I don't know if you know a guy named Jared Calhoun. I don't think you've ever heard that name, have you?
I haven't heard that one. And I mentioned earlier my pick for the job. Where my heart is. And it's funny. Talked to my son earlier today, and I was down at Pikeville several weeks ago, and we were talking about the jobs, who's going to go where. And that's always a topic of conversation among the coaches, Well, it just so happened that him and Jared were on the phone that night. And he told Jared, he said, well, this is the way I see it unfold. And he said, what's his name? McCallum, I think, or Wade will be one. He said, I'm telling you, he's going up in Iowa. And then this, or North Carolina State, wherever they go. And then there was another one going to Iowa, one to North Carolina State. He said, so at least one. You know who that is. And Jerry started laughing. And he said, so he told me today, he said, Dad, I called it. He said, he's in line. I was like, oh, I know he is. He's done a fantastic job at Utah State.
Boy, is he ever. You know, and it's interesting because, and Darren and you and I had an exchange about this, is that, you know, I can relate to this. And here's how I can relate to it. I mean, as people know, I came to West Virginia, my wife and I, from Western New York, just like Wolf did, Ron and Dale. And it just spoke to me and always has. And that's why I'm back. But what a lot of people don't know is after West Virginia, my wife and I lived in Iowa for 7 years. And I've lived in the Deep South. I've lived in the Northeast. The only place we haven't lived is Southwest. We haven't lived, Mountain States, and the West Coast. And of all the places, I tell you what, going from West Virginia to Central Iowa, it's just a different situation. And I'm not saying that the situation in West Virginia had anything to do with it. It could have been simply IU, but I'm right. Saying that's if you're born and bred as he was, and that it's a different culture. You know, I like both places. I love West Virginia, and the thing that draws me to Jared Calhoun is that he's got that grounding, even though he's a native of Ohio. It's right on the border there. And he coached at Fairmont, did a great job there. And boy, as you say, he's done a great job at Utah State. But he's gonna get the best coach he can, and you don't know how this is gonna shake out. But
right. A lot of things happen with all that comes down. But yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. My son and I had that same conversation. I said, you know, DeVries is a Midwestern guy, and I said the Indiana is a, you know, historically, you know, great basketball school, and you know, you think about, I said, you just put yourself in that position and say you're out in California coaching, and a job in West Virginia comes up, or a job in Pennsylvania, you're gonna be inclined to come back where your roots are, and so I wasn't, you know, all that surprised that he went. And I wasn't surprised at all, to be honest with you. And I think, and I told my son this, I said, I think, you know, we need to get somebody with at least an East Coast feel. And I said, you know, Jared's from Ohio, but he coached at WVU, he coached at Fairmont. I said, so he has roots here. He's got a lot of friends, family here. His mother still lives, I think, in Fairmont. So, you know, you need somebody that's grounded here, and that is not going to be looking at West Virginia as a stepping stone, because it's not a stepping stone program. And I don't think DeVries come in with the intention of that. I really don't. I think the opportunity presented itself, and I think he felt like it was one he couldn't pass up, and he just went back to the Midwest and Indiana, which is, like I said, a good basketball school. So,
well, you're right. What we're seeking here, and you see it on Facebook. People want stability, and why not? And so, and one way you get stability is someone who has links to the university, the state. The flip side of that, another way you can get stability is, and Daryl Prue and I talked about this last night, is that is get an established coach who is in late 50s, maybe 60s, early 60s. This is their last rodeo, and then they bring in some really good assistants, and then when it's and if they're successful, when it's time for them to leave, they pass the baton to one of the assistants. That's exactly what Judd Heathcote did at Michigan State. He handed the baton to Tom Izzo, who was on his staff for a number of years. And so, and one of the names we bandied around, believe it or not, is Fran McCaffrey, who comes from Pennsylvania. That's where he was born, and he's already said he's going to coach again. I mean, there's no question. He said, "Hey, I want to coach again. I want to start establishing a program. Let's recruit some players and let's go." And then if someone like that were to come, loaded up with WVU former players or former WVU assistants, so you get that strong connection to the university and state. But you know. We're not going to make that call. Win'll make the right call.
That's right. That's like I said. We can just voice our opinion, but when it comes down to it, he'll make the call, and I'm sure he's going to do what's best. And he's so far had a pretty good track record. You know, even though DeVries leaving, I'm sure not sitting well with him, but He's been able to select good coaches, and I don't have any doubt he'll pick another one. So the one thing you hate about it is the lack of continuity, the up and down swings, and that's tough. But again, that's why you got to get somebody in that's established here and it's going to stay here. I mean, they can all say they're going to stay, but
Yeah, but you and I have not talked about this, so I don't know if you know the answer. I don't. But when Neil Brown left, he authored a statement that went public. I don't recall that DeVries did that. Did he?
DeVries made a statement, but it never mentioned WVU.
Oh,
It just
boy.
mentioned the reasons why he wanted to go to Indiana, why he was going to Indiana. So he did give a statement, but nothing directed to at or about WVU. So
See, that's a lesson, I think, for all of us. It's not just the what, it's the how.
yeah, and
Not
they
just the
did
what.
show. I did see today. They showed pictures of his wife and son and daughter at press conference or at a press conference, and they didn't look very happy. So I'm sure it's not been an easy thing on him. I'm sure, and I'm not taking up for him, but it couldn't have been an easy decision. No matter what the money was like or anything else, I'm sure it was something that he wrangled with, and I'm sure he had a deadline. Either you want it or you don't. And I'm sure he didn't have much time to make a decision, and got to be tough. And he may issue a statement before it's all said and done. We'll see.
Yeah.
I would think he
Well,
would. I don't know for sure, but he would. So
well,
anyway,
move on.
polls gives us plenty of stuff to yak about. So,
Amen. Amen. Let's talk a bit about next week. Yeah, next week. Yeah, Darren, if you can throw, there he is. This, talk about a face that most people will not recognize because Kevin Johnston, who is the new varsity club director, actually the role that Dale Wolfley had for a number of years. Darren, if you could put that up a little bit so people have an easier chance of reading it, that would be appreciated if you can. If not, I understand. There you go. You did it. But yeah, the varsity club, for people who don't know, it's an issue that's come up on this show repeatedly because this is the key person in terms of relationships with former athletes, tickets, reunions, meetings, all kinds of stuff relating to former players. And Dale Wolfley, when he was director of the varsity club, he came to WVU after he was a junior college football coach out in Arizona. Did a hell of a job, and that position has been either vacant or not tended to the way it should be. And so Kevin comes from the insurance industry, but I've talked with a number of people who know him, and I've heard nothing but positive things. And again, through the magic of Mark Parsons, we were able to get in touch with Kevin, and he has agreed to be with us next week to talk about the varsity club and what he wants to do with it. And that really is to provide a forum, a connection, a closer relationship with the university for all the athletes in 18 varsity sports who are Mountaineer alums. And so he's going to be with us next week, and he's looking forward to it. And I'll tell you, as you know, as a former coach, there are a lot of people who play support roles that don't get in the limelight, but their responsibilities are so critical. And I'm here to tell you, and the players would tell you, you've heard it, this is one of them.
Yep, sure is. And I'm sure he comes with a lot of enthusiasm, and will be good for that position because that's something in the last few years has waned quite a bit, is the involvement of the alumni, the former players, and I know they're looking forward to getting back in the fold, if you will. And I'm sure it's going to be interesting talking to him, see what kind of plans he has in store. It's going to be fun. Looking forward to it. Mm-hmm. All right, Frank, had a great show tonight. Enjoyed it, and two good guests, and very entertaining and enlightening. Enjoyed it as always, and we appreciate everybody for tuning in and checking us out. We hope you'll tune in next week when we have have Kevin with us, and that'll be a lot of fun, I'm sure, and informative. I think a lot of people will be interested in this topic. They'll want to know because they know some of the hard feelings that's kind of transpired over the last 5, 6, 7 years, and I think people want to get back to having those folks involved in the program, and I think it's vital and it's important that we get them involved and keep them involved. That's what makes your program. So that'll be a lot of fun talking to him. Well, Frank, if nothing else, bid you adieu for the night. Appreciate your work and what you put into this and making it happen, Darren. Behind the scenes, we appreciate him, and of course Al Johnson and CADE KINCAID for joining us tonight. We thank everybody for tuning in. Look forward to coming to you next week on the Mountaineer Locker Room. Then and now, for Frank Fear, I'm Greg Chris. Good night, everybody.